Hey, what's up, everybody? Not sitting in front of my little wall today. I'm actually outdoors. Decided to get a nice little walk since I'm off work for the day for Veterans Day. So much appreciation to all the people who are serving in our armed forces. Big shout out to my homeboy, known him since day one. Love him like a brother. Thanks to all that you do. And also, shout out to my grandfather who passed away several years ago for what he did, and all those other people as well, right? So obviously today we're thanking the active service members, even if they're inactive, but the people who are alive, thank them for what they do. But anyways, I just wanted to, talk about just some different stuff, right? So you think about what people are fighting for, and you think about, freedoms and our ability to choose. And I was actually watching a video, I think it was Jon Stewart was talking about, the ability of when you have to make a small sacrifice for the greater good, right? You have certain groups that'll polarize individuals, make it seem like that decision is terrible. And by making that small concession for the greater good, you're somehow infringing upon people's rights and their freedoms. Not really going to get political, but it made me think, right? If you live in a society where ultimately freedom to do whatever you want to do, at what point does that freedom to do what you want to, if it infringes upon somebody else's rights, whether that be, let's say indirectly, obviously, as they say, your right to swing your fist is going to end where the other person's face begins. But if it's something as innocuous as avoiding something that may or may not impact somebody down the line, what's the stance on that? And just curious, right? It's like, hey, think about a lot of people and their parents, right? So you grow up in a privileged position. If you're fortunate enough, somebody before you made some sacrifices for you to get where you are. Now, it could be easy to forget that people made sacrifices and look at this life as a vacuum, as if it's disconnected from that which preceded you and that which is going to come after you, and feel like these people made poor decisions and I'm going to protect what's right because I have this freedom, it's right to do so. You have the right to do so, and it may be legal, as always, the other point that comes into play, but legality does not equal morality. But again, it just made me wonder, if you fight for like freedoms, and then sometimes there's the freedom, it's the fight to ensure that the collective moves on, right? It's not to, in my opinion, protect a few things for a few people, right? So that certain people can enjoy a certain lifestyle, whatever that may be. But it's the continuation of all that's here. So great country, love the people who love my family, but at the same time, I wouldn't want to promote something that would ensure success of one side, member of my family, while also ensuring declining access to certain privileges for others. And you start to wonder, if you have that continuation where positive outcomes are consolidated amongst a certain group of people, and the majority gets locked out of this view, this vision, this dream, right? Then what sustains the group, the collective, right? You can't cut off your nose to spite your face. And while I may enjoy a privileged position, if the rest aren't, then everything that I do, that I consume, somebody has to care enough, or at least be compensated in such a way that they want to build that thing for me, right? And it's like a house of cards. Like, you need every part of the system to function. So maybe it's the janitors, you got the chefs, the people making clothes, etc. Housing, building houses. Those things are necessary. And so you start to think, hey, all of these things are needed for this entire system to roll. But the way that it's prefaced is, hey, funnel and do this one thing because that's what's heavily rewarded. Of course, obviously, capitalism would dictate that resources will be deployed in the most efficient way possible. And then also you ask yourself, well, if there are a few tech companies or a few companies that are siphoning off a lot of the talent because, hey, fair enough, they've got the money to pay them, you wonder what would happen if those minds went elsewhere or could deploy their mental capital in another area, another capacity. Just an interesting thought exercise, right? And stuff that I think about. But again, it's like, well, going back to what sustains us. If we have the ability to have this total freedom, and I can make decisions to ensure my success while also harming another group, right? And then we ask ourselves, well, how is this system maintained? And not only from lower end, but on the higher end, because I have conversations with my friends all the time around what drives people every day, right? So a person starts off at one point and they say, you know what, just using arbitrary numbers here, just random. Somebody starts out, they make 30K a year. It's like, oh, I need to get more money. They work hard, they go to school, and they were surviving somehow. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that they were in a position to be comfortable at that level, right? I'm not saying that they were able to be in a secure area and have their basic needs met and not worry about a potential shock, right? Because they didn't have the ability to put enough money away for a rainy day. But if you have that and you get some more, and so what motivates you to get to that next level, right, is that belief. You work hard, you can achieve and make more money, you can earn more money, you can get a better position through improvement. So you figure out what's hot, you go to college, or you go to a trade school. Because I will say that, a big proponent of trades, because those can be very lucrative. And I study finance, so when you consider your ROI, it's a lot higher, even with the lower salary point or pay point, because you had to spend less to get that certification, right, that trade. Not saying that getting a trade is easier, not going to downplay that. A lot of hard work and skill involved, but still, that's a viable option. So let's say you go to college, get a degree, you study, whatever it is, right? Just insert whatever degree plan you're thinking of. You go from 30,000 to, let's say, 100. And now you're able to meet your basic needs, able to live comfortable. So now that the idea of struggle isn't motivating you, now it's, in my opinion, the idea of excess. Now it's like you have enough that you could live comfortably and manage your expenses, your cost basis. Don't have a fancy car, maybe you wear some nice clothes, but you don't have to go overboard. But now you condition yourself to say, hey, if I don't like what I'm doing, then, or if I've worked, I deserve this, I'm gonna treat myself. So I'm gonna buy the luxury German vehicle because that's a nicer car. Even though, to be fair, I trust the car that they make hundreds of thousands of units of and selling millions of versus the one that's gonna be only afforded by a select group of people. But that's neither here nor there. You condition yourself to believe you're doing it because it's better. In my opinion, it's really because there is this greed or ego that is motivating you, right? So you think about, I don't remember when or where, they discovered that if you market a product based on facts, basically appealing to the rational part of the brain, sales are harder, right? But if you market it as an experience, as a way of showing that there's status, then people are more willing to pay that premium. But they can logically rationalize, hey, this is better, whatever it is, this is, I deserve it, etc. But you start to wonder, at what point is enough, right? So you have this situation where you are now just buying more and more shit than you really need, to be fair. Because, you could have lived a more modest life, but now you surround yourself with new friends, and these new friends, they've got the big cars, they got the big houses, they're wearing the fancy designer clothing. You can't get left out from that, right? You have got to be a part of that. So you end up becoming a slave to your own desires, your own needs, never complacent, right? Because, and we're going to get to that complacency and how that ties into some things. But you're like, oh, I got to keep achieving. And you begin to consume, right? You just keep consuming more and more and more. And now you have this cost basis, or your expenses each month, astronomical. And then you keep getting jobs that you make more money, and you make more money, you spend more money. And so now, how much of who you are, a lot of who you are, is tied into what you have. That's your identity. So the more and more you ratchet up the expenses, the more stress comes up when you get the higher paying job. But you can't walk away from that, because to walk away from that is to accept that, hey, this is too much for me. And you put this image together that that's not who I am, I got to keep achieving, etc., etc. So you allow yourself to stay in these suboptimal conditions just based on perception. And now you're like, well, what do I do, right? I'm just going to keep working a job, that I hate, that I can't stand, because I have created this life that I didn't need. So I've become a slave to my own desires, right? And so then it just starts to feed off of one another, because you say, hey, I hate this job. So you hate this job, but you're working the job because you create this lifestyle that can be sustained by this job. And you hate all the hours you put in just to make it. You're trading in the paycheck to paycheck for a fancier version of paycheck to paycheck, or whatever that may be, right? And so you reward yourself by buying things you don't need because you're miserable in what you're doing. So now you have further laid on the cost burden, and now it's even more money that you have to make, and you've got more struggles that you're going through, and it just keeps feeding off of itself to a vicious cycle until, like the Matrix, you disconnect yourself. A lot of people won't allow themselves to do that because it's difficult. If you surround yourself with certain friends and people who have not come to that same realization, then maybe you need to just step away for a moment and regroup and regather yourself, find your center point, and understand what's important. Now, I go back to complacency because I want to touch on that. I was watching random YouTube shorts, and one of the videos, it's a podcast, I cannot recall the name. You just flip through, and a lot of those clips are reposted several times over. But it was the comment around, what is rich in regards to relationships. Woman said, I want a rich man. Nothing wrong with wanting financial stability and with wanting any of that stuff, right? You want to be comfortable. You want to know that the next generation is taken care of, right? You want to know that you have your basic needs met. Totally understand. Of course, they didn't put a financial earning threshold, but it was really mindset, right? Being ambitious, always just wanting more, right? So not sitting around, climbing that corporate ladder, buying different properties, investing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And if you think about that, capitalism needs that to thrive, because you need people who aren't satisfied, because that's how you keep driving never-ending consumption. If people were satisfied with what they had, then this entire system would be a bunch of bunk. I was like, what the hell would you do? So I started thinking, I was like, oh shit, this is, but that's crazy, because not only does it motivate you to keep the wheels of the economy going, right? We can talk about that all day if we want. But then it's like, how does that tie into the actual relationship? It's the dating dynamics. So if I say, I want somebody who is ambitious, which could be another word for never satisfied, an inability to decide what you want. Like, when is enough enough? And I think maybe enough is enough when you know who you are and what you represent and your center point, and you can be comfortable with that. So if you want somebody who's never satisfied, always ambitious, then I wondered to myself, that is probably a personality trait that is going to pour over in other aspects of their life. Now, if I'm constantly working insane hours because I want to get to the next best thing, how do I marry that up against the idea of a relationship? Because I may look at that relationship as a similar stepping stone, right? Because a lot of people feel that, oh, he or she only stayed with me until they got this good job, then they left me. Well, if you wanted somebody who was ambitious, in their ambition, because they aren't satisfied with where they are, because think about it, if you're a super teacher, amazing teacher, and you're fine with that, there's nothing wrong with that. If you're a great electrician, there's nothing wrong with saying, I just want to do this and be this thing, right? Everybody's not going to ascend to these positions of leadership, and so they shouldn't be made to feel bad because they may not aspire to it. And just because they don't aspire to that doesn't mean they lack the aptitude. They just may be comfortable in who they are. And so they say, oh, he left me, he didn't care about me. It's like, yeah, because their identity was tied in where they were. And they were ambitious maybe because they felt like, hey, who I am, I'm better than this, so I'm gonna get to this next level, I'm gonna level up. And if that's the case, and somebody levels up, then what the hell happens? You have somebody who now self and identity is tied with their status. So now that they've moved up closer to who they feel they really are, then why not move closer to who they thought they should really be with in terms of a mate? I mean, that may be an unpopular opinion, but that's just something to think about, right? It's the double-edged sword of life. You have to consider that we're not like encapsulated, the different parts, like our professional and our personal. They aren't these totally separate beings that just happen to coincide within the same person. Like, no, a lot of what drives people And in professional lives, some of those are stemming from personal, like traits in our personal lives. They overlap, right? We spend so much time at work anyway. But anyways, this is just a bit of a rant. I'm about to do a little jogging, but I figure, hey, I'm out here. Let me just come out here, talk to you guys, share my thoughts, see what you think. Let me know in the comment section below what your thoughts are about this. Again, this is more of a ramble, a rant, not a lot of structure, but that's what we do here at What Was I Saying. But yeah, go ahead, like if you liked it, thumbs down. If you didn't like it, please subscribe. That would be awesome. Trying to get more people to check out the channel. And you'll be notified if you click the bell and subscribe. If you subscribe and click the bell, you'll be notified anytime I upload a video. So definitely looking for that engagement. But until then, again, happy Veterans Day. You take care, and until next time.